Good afternoon. I am Theodosia T. Shields, the proud director of the James E. Shepard Memorial Library, located on the campus of North Carolina Central University. I am so honored to welcome you to our first Juneteenth program entitled Looking Back and Moving Forward. Thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join us today. Get ready to be informed by this distinguished panel. It is now my pleasure to turn the program over to our moderator, Mr. Andre Vann, our University Archives coordinator and public history instructor, to begin the conversation. Thank you again and welcome.
I'd like to say good afternoon to everyone. And indeed, thank you, Dr. Shields, for really helping to provide the vision along with the marketing committee to help bring this program to fruition. It is always an honor when we can get a chance to understand that, when you look at the library, not just as a library, but also as a cultural center, as a place to broaden a much wider knowledge and bring these conversations to the fore. And I think that is what we're going to do today. And so we're quite pleased and thankful for that. And thank you so much for the introduction. But also, as I begin, let me also take just a few minutes to offer a window into the concept of Juneteenth, looking back and moving forward. The idea is based upon, as you may know, what is known as the Sankofa, or backwards looking, forward moving bird. It is an Akan ideogram from Ghana, meaning go back and bring what you left. Go back in time and bring to the present past values needed now. The symbol is expressed in a 1976 poem by A. Caper Mensah, which says, "That bird is wise. Look, its beak back turned, picks for the present what is best from ancient eyes, then steps forward, on ahead to meet your future undeterred." And such is the idea of this entire program, to think about the idea of looking back and going back and finding those things that help to bring value to us today. Also, we have a guiding thought, which is that the aim of the historian, like that of the artist, is to enlarge our picture of the world, to give us a new way of looking at things. And that's by historian James Joel. And so you'll hear not just a little bit of, as you've already heard, a little bit of poetry. You will also have a chance to hear the spoken word and individuals sharing. And that is how we all will grow. So again, as I begin, we say, thankful are we for those who came before us. For today, as you may know, is pregnant with possibilities, hope, and reflection. It is also a day to celebrate, but it's also one of sadness, as we, on this date, mark the Charleston massacre that occurred. So we're caught in between these two things. But this program, Juneteenth, Looking Back While Moving Forward, is an attempt to bring into the public consciousness an important moment in the history of those who are descendants of the enslaved community. And it is also a mile marker along the long road to progress in this nation. The ground has shifted, even within the last 24 hours, for those who may not be aware, in that the Juneteenth celebration is now celebrated in 47 states, for those who may not be aware. Also, equally important, a Gallup poll taken in May noted that 12% of all Americans say they know a lot about Juneteenth, while 28% report they have no knowledge whatsoever of Juneteenth. But nearly 70% of African Americans say they at least have some knowledge about the holiday, compared to 31% of white America. So in essence, roughly half, 49% of all Americans, say they believe Juneteenth should be taught in the public schools, with most others, 35% unsure of this topic. So that lets you know that this moment is important, that we attempt to celebrate here. Now, so we're being ably aware that the culmination of much of this work around Juneteenth will occur today at 3:30. So we will be good stewards of our time here. At 3:30 today, as you would be aware, President Biden will sign the long-awaited Juneteenth federal holiday, a bipartisan bill into law at the White House. And we say, oh, what a day to occur on a day such as this as well. But also let me thank alumni Phyllis Coley, the owner and founder of the Spectacular magazine, who began 16 years ago, bringing to our awareness and into our public consciousness the idea of Juneteenth as a holiday here in Durham and also in the state of North Carolina. And so as we say here, Durham and North Carolina Central University are both fertile ground for conversations. And that is what I think and I know will occur here on today. Durham in the collective has always been a place willing to talk about issues that are important, and we're going to do that. And so I always remind folks that much like back home, much of everything we learned and knew occurred on the front porch, right? When people passed by and the issues came about. And so this is our virtual front porch. I want you to keep in mind. Just a new venue and a new place. But Dr. Shields reminded me on yesterday that we do expect, hopefully on next year, we will have an in-person event. So that is the hope that we can look forward to. So as I prepare to bring up City Councilwoman Freeman, I do want to share lastly, before we proceed on, just a few themes in which you will hear on today. Some of these themes include self-reflection, social justice, criminal justice reform, challenges facing African-American women between COVID-19, the question of historical memory. You also get a look at the Black church, economic justice, and also, of course, between COVID-19 and George Floyd, and now, as we would say, Anthony Brown. So that is important as we move forward. And so at this time, I'm pleased to present to you all one who needs really no introduction. We have here with us Councilwoman and alumni of this university, Councilwoman Deidreana Freeman, who will share with us some remarks brought forth in regards to Juneteenth.
Thank you, Andre, and thank you all for inviting me to be here with you this afternoon. I'm grateful as well to join you in celebration as a recent graduate of North Carolina Central. I am Deidreana Freeman, and I serve as City Council member for Ward 1. And I wanted to share with you today the resolution we passed last year that allowed for us to move forward with the holiday this year in observance of actual Juneteenth. And I am just going to read it so that I don't ramble. So, resolution to commemorate Juneteenth. Whereas Juneteenth is the oldest celebration of the emancipation of enslaved African American people, and is so named for the June 19th, 1866 adoption of Black Independence Day in Galveston, Texas. And whereas Juneteenth celebrates America's commitment to liberty and equality in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, along with the Emancipation Proclamation issued by President Lincoln on January 1st, 1863, and the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which abolished slavery and was ratified by Congress on December 6, 1865. And whereas the U.S. Census discloses the population of North Carolina in 1860 was 992,622, of which 331,059 were enslaved, including 5,108 people that were enslaved and living in Orange County. And whereas the 1860 records of enslaved people for Durham are found documented through the Orange County Register of Deeds, as Durham County was subsequently founded in 1881. And the city of Durham was subsequently founded in 1869. And whereas the history of the African Americans is a study in resilience in the face of the brutal historic realities of slavery in this country, and the present day suffering of over 45 million people in forced labor, child labor, and other forms of human trafficking. And whereas Juneteenth commemorates the day freedom was proclaimed to all enslaved people in the South by Union General Gordon Grandler on June 19, 1865 in Galveston, Texas, more than 2.5 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation by President Abraham Lincoln. For the first time in 2015, Juneteenth was finally officially recognized as Juneteenth Independence Day in America by the President, Barack Obama, and the United States Congress. Be it therefore resolved that the Durham City Council recognizes, adopts, and proclaims this resolution to underscore the freedom and dignity of every human being. As a governmental body, we oppose and reject any form of racism or oppression, and pledge to support our residents, churches, and organizations working to achieve genuine equality and protection of the human rights of all the people of Durham. And I share that today, just noting, as Andre did, that the culmination of where we are today, where our president is signing federal legislation, a federal bill to observe Juneteenth, is just a small step, but a mighty step in the work we're doing to make sure that we have wealth equality and bring an end to racism. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to share with us, and we certainly appreciate that. Appreciate you. Thank you. We also will note that we have received proclamations from the Office of North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper. Also, we have received letters from Congressman and alumnus G.K. Butterfield Jr., who represents the 1st Congressional District, and Congressman David Price, who represents the 4th Congressional District, in which this county is seated. And so we thank you all for those words to help express to us and this panel that has been expressed before. So we certainly thank you all. Thank you. So at this time, we're going to transition over, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists, and then we will next hear from Dr. Tony Frazier, who will share with us his wonderful research, and we look forward to it. And so let me just note that we have equally distributed talent on this panel. So let me just begin there. I think when we think about here at this university, many of the great faculty members and staff members who are here, we have assembled here, I think, a wonderful group to sort of help us with this conversation. One most notably, Dr. Tony Frazier, who was recently just promoted to Associate Professor of History here at this university. He also will be away for, I believe, about a year at the North Carolina Humanities Center as a Mellon Fellow. And so we thank him for his work. His work evolves around the question of not just looking at European history, British history, but also, more importantly, the importance of technology in the classroom and understanding its role and its place and its impact. And so we will, at a much more appropriate time, share with you the much more fuller biographies of each and every one coming forward. We also will have here with us coming up Dr. Saronda Robinson, who is an epidemiologist as well as professor in the public health education program here. Her areas of research involve obesity, body image, hypertension, cancer, and also let us note as well that she has also been in the forefront of the coordination of the Eagle Pride blood marrow, cord blood, and sickle cell drive here at this institution. And she too has had a very tremendous impact in helping to coordinate COVID-19 activities, not just here on this campus, but in the community at large. And so we are thankful for the role that she has played here. We will then follow up with Attorney Irving Joyner, who was just promoted to the 2021 Charles Hamilton Houston Endowed Chair at the North Carolina Central University School of Law. For those who may not be aware, I will not tell you how many years he has been here. He has not aged, not one day, by the way. But not only has he served as a professor of law here for, I shall not say how many years, but he also is a legal giant, recognized all throughout the land for his work, but also more importantly for the training of the next generation of new legal eagles here at this university. And also, I'll be remiss if I did not know, you have a great opportunity on Sunday to listen to, and he has invited me on numerous occasions to the Legal Eagle Review on W90.7, who, by the way, is broadcasting this very conversation as we speak. And so we're thankful for that as well. And so again, we thank him as well. But also we have with us Reverend Dr. Michael Page. He is the director of NCCU External Affairs and Government Relations. He also is a pastor of the Antioch Baptist Church, but also has served in various other roles as well. He was a former county commissioner, as well as a member of the Board of Education here in Durham. And so he's bringing that level of strength to us in terms of understanding the pivotal and powerful role that the church plays in the African American community. And if anyone saw the great documentary on the Black Church by Skip Gates, you understand that his voice was interviewed here on W90.7 on the Sunday program, as always. And then we have the great Dr. Henry McKoy, Director of Entrepreneurship and the NCCU School of Business. I should also note on faculty at Duke University, as well as Harvard University. Now here's one who is working on current research around the question of economic wealth in African-American businesses and centering on Durham. But more importantly, he is a leading voice in helping us to better contextualize and understand the relationships that exist with the question of economic wealth, the struggles in the African American community. And so he's going to provide for us a question around the world of work. And what does that mean? We know of many great institutions and financial businesses that have talked about the question of social justice since George Floyd, since last summer. So we want to hear from him. And then he has a very important announcement. I've asked him, he just presented just an hour ago. And so I want you to make sure at the appropriate time you share that as well. So with that being said, I have introduced our group, and you will hear just a little bit more. And so, audience, I want you to join me in virtually thanking all of our distinguished guests who've taken time out of their busy schedules to participate in this Juneteenth program. And also, it should be noted as well that this event will be and is being recorded, and it will be shared later on several platforms, and that is important. All attendees are muted as we are in event mode. And note that we will have question and answer at the end, and do use the chat feature as appropriate. In the chat feature, we would ask that if you have a question, certainly, and if you have it and wish to have it directly or directed towards one of our panelists, please just put a Q there and then note what the question is and go directly into the question. And I know there will be, once the conversation starts up, I know there will be a great deal of anticipation and others will want to sort of add in conversations. But in order to stay on time, and as I am the conductor, we want to make sure we are prudent with our time as well. And so as we prepare to come forward, I just want to note for just a few closing thoughts, and then the next voice you should hear shall be that of Dr. Tony Frazier, is that we want you to sort of, as we prepare to go in this conversation, rethink how we look at the question of emancipation, but also how we look at the institution of slavery. Because we can believe that there is a direct line from the institution of slavery to many of the issues that we are going to discuss on today, and that will be paramount. Also, what's important is by challenging the narratives that have been written in the past, we open up a new opportunity, a new door to create new narratives. And that is all important in today's conversation. But also, and more importantly, the question of public consciousness and public memory have both shaped the experiences of African Americans. And you will see that in the range of the topics and conversations that will go from the question of jubilation to also these painful moments in our past. And so lastly, we hope to not only discuss issues, but also provide, as I would say, a prescription in a 21st century manner and way. And so we're glad to do so. So at this time, I am pleased to bring forward my great colleague and one of the great alums of this university, Dr. Tony Frazier, who will share with us Imagining Juneteenth Holiday Geospatially, Digital Story Mapping and Memory. And we will say to you, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to assist us, and we look forward to seeing your research. And we turn the floor over to you.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you, Andre. I am Dr. Tony Frazier. In our collective memory, Emancipation Day is as vast as the number of our ancestors who were emancipated. My goal here today is to remind us that there were many Emancipation Day observations during and after the Civil War. With this digital presentation, I am going to trace some of the earliest sites of emancipation celebrations and conclude with some comments about the legacy of Juneteenth and memory. Let us begin our geography of emancipation proclamations. DC Emancipation Act of April 16, 1862. This DC Emancipation Act ended slavery in Washington, D.C. From this day forward until today, April 16th remains Emancipation Day for the residents and African Americans in D.C., in Washington, D.C. Gallipolis, Ohio, September the 22nd, 1862. On this date, President Abraham Lincoln issued what was called the preliminary version of the Emancipation Proclamation. In this region of Ohio, they began a celebration of Emancipation Proclamation on that date, and that date has continued until today. They actually cite themselves as the longest continuous celebration of Emancipation Proclamation in the United States. Norfolk, Virginia, January 1st, 1863, was the site of a very important early celebration of Emancipation Proclamation held by African Americans. There was a huge, massive parade. They listened to speeches. They even burned an effigy of Confederate President Jefferson Davis, and African American women trampled over the Confederate flag. These anniversaries of emancipation in Norfolk will continue into the 20th century. Port Royal, South Carolina, January 1st, 1863. On New Year's Day, 1863 was the scene of an elaborate ceremony celebrating the enactment of the Emancipation Proclamation here in South Carolina. Hundreds of formerly enslaved Black freedmen and women came from Port Royal, Beaufort, and the Sea Islands to join federal, military, and civilian authorities and others marking the event. This was a day-long celebration of the Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st, 1863. East Tennessee, August 8th, 1863, Emancipation Day. The observation of August 8th in East Tennessee began with the origin story that military governor and future president Andrew Johnson freed his personal slaves. One of his slaves, Samuel Johnson, established August 8th as Emancipation Day. The first recorded ceremony began August 8th, 1871, complete with bands, picnics, and speeches. The August 8th celebration spread across Tennessee and into states like Kentucky and Missouri. August 8th Emancipation Day celebrations continue even today in parts of Western Kentucky. In the cities of Paducah, Hopkinsville, Russellsville, and Allensville, continue to mark August 8th as a date of emancipation for those in that region of Kentucky. This date is associated, of course, as I just said, with Tennessee. The earliest Emancipation Day celebration in Western Kentucky finds its start date in 1866. Charleston, South Carolina, began a tradition of celebrating Emancipation Day on January 1st, 1865. Similar to other events throughout the South, January 1st became the Emancipation Day holiday for most African Americans in the South. Richmond, Virginia, April 3rd, 1865. For African Americans in the city of Richmond, April 3rd became the Emancipation Day celebration. This was the date that the city fell to Union forces. New Bern, North Carolina, January 1st, 1863, 1865. I have three dates here that I want to make note of. On January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation was read aloud at Andrews Chapel, New Bern's largest Black church, and other churches in the city. The proclamation was read to the African Americans newly freed. It was not a joyous and not a subdued. It was really one of learning that they were free. On January 1st, 1864, there was a much more elaborate celebration of the Emancipation Proclamation in New Bern. And we should understand that New Bern was controlled by Union forces. One of the reasons for the very subdued 1863 celebration was Governor Stanley was a military governor. He wasn't really in favor of a lot of things in support of the Union, even though he was in charge of this territory. By the time we come to 1864 and 1865, January 1st, the celebrations of the Emancipation Proclamation are larger. You are seeing close to 4,000 people coming, Black people coming from Roanoke and the Outer Banks to participate in these celebrations of Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st. And this tradition will continue in this part of North Carolina. Raleigh, North Carolina, Emancipation Day, January 1st. Some of the earliest celebrations of Emancipation Day in Raleigh occurred in 1869 and 1870. And this tradition would continue into the 1920s and 1930s. And for almost 50 years, Emancipation Day was a major secular holiday for Black North Carolinians and widely celebrated throughout the state, attended by thousands. Parades, prayers, poetic orations, speeches, and singing were features. Opportunities to commune together, recount their past struggles against slavery, and to recite their progress since emancipation. Always there were Emancipation Day resolutions at these events. In North Carolina, the NAACP and the Black Church kept the Emancipation Day celebrations going well into the 20th century. I have found evidence of Emancipation Day celebrations in Chatham County as late as 2012. Wilmington, North Carolina also began a tradition of celebrating Emancipation Day on January 1st in this 1869 period. I have located Dr. James E. Shepard, founder of the University of North Carolina Central University, as the Emancipation Day speaker at the 1940 Emancipation Day in Wilmington, North Carolina. Tallahassee, Florida, May 20th, 1865. is noted as the Emancipation Day. On May 20th, 1865, 1 month before Juneteenth, Union Brigadier General Edward McCook took possession of Tallahassee from Confederate forces and read the Emancipation Proclamation at Knott's house. First organized celebration of Emancipation Day in the state of Florida was in the city of Tallahassee, and that took place May 20th, 1866. Galveston, Texas, June 19th, 1865, Juneteenth. Juneteenth, as we know, is the end of slavery in the United States. This day commemorates when General Granger read General Order Number 3, sharing the news of Emancipation Proclamation to the residents of Texas and freed all the remaining enslaved people in the state. And that holiday tradition would leave Texas and move into the Southwest and come forward. The legacy of emancipation celebrations in African American memory. So at this point, I want to talk about the legacy of Juneteenth. June 19th, 1865, as a date of memory, is here to stay. Juneteenth is now on its way to becoming a national holiday. Juneteenth has moved from a local and regional holiday in Texas to engulf the entire United States. The fashion now is to think that Juneteenth was always remembered. It was not. Juneteenth faded away in the 1950s and 1960s in Texas, but had a serious revitalization in the 1970s and gained more steam in the 1980s across the country and mushroomed into the celebration we know today over the past 15 to 20 years. With that, we should remember memories and celebrations can die. My response to each of us is to remember and celebrate all the various dates and sites of memories of Emancipation Proclamation in various regions of the Black community across this country. We should remind ourselves on Juneteenth to pause and reflect over the history of the Civil War. We should understand that freedom was not something given to Black people. Black folks possessed a very expansive interpretation of the Emancipation Proclamation. We should remember and study the events of the war. We should learn about the 200,000 Black soldiers who fought in the Civil War. We should learn about the other ways Blacks participated in their freedom struggle during the Civil War. Juneteenth should be a time to make educational, health, economic, social, and political assessments in our communities. As I close, in the words of Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, teach us, forever dead, there is no dream but deed. There is no deed but memory. Thank you for your attention and your patience today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Frazier, who has never disappointed us at any level, for bringing forward, I think, what for us is an important starting point, helping us to have a visual picture and look at the day in which we're celebrating today. And so we want to thank you for helping to sort of shape that memory for us and to bring it into consciousness, but also helps us understand that we're talking about human beings as well, not just a holiday, but also taking a look at the lives of those that had been enslaved. And so I want to thank you for that. And so I'm going to use this as an opportunity to dovetail as we prepare to move on with our panelists as well. But I want to also make sure that we not move too far in which we forget to recognize those that have come before us. And that is important. And so I would say to not just the panelists, but also to those in the audience, our attendees. At this point in time, this is what we call in recognition of those that came before us, right? And so we want you to name someone, to call someone's name. That matters. That still matters. To call someone's name that comes to mind when you think about Juneteenth and when you think about the question of emancipation, right? And for those of you, again, who are attendees online, in your own way, you can use your chat feature. You can call the name out yourself. And so, but I want everyone just to take a minute. And those who are panelists, if you you can call it out now, or you can be private about it. I'll leave it up to you, and then I'll close out on my name. But it's important to evoke that spirit of our elders in this place, in this conversation, that they not be forgotten.
Say Floyd McKissick Sr.
Thank you. Thank you.
Walter Lewis.
Thank you.
Fed Parish.
Thank you.
Alan and Georgia Joyner.
Thank you.
Frank Shields.
Thank you.
Fannie Lou Hamer.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else?
Carrie Elizabeth Smith Harris.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else? If not, I want to bring forward my great-great-grandmother, Rebecca Hawkins from Vance County. I'm taking that little minute of privilege. She was a midwife by training, delivered most babies, white and black, in our little community in Vance County. And so I think about the fact that, you know, here was someone who had imagination and took that money that she made from delivering babies, even post-emancipation, and use that to buy land, to build a little community in which we still hold a deed to. And so that's important, that she had imagination beyond question of slavery. And so that was important to us. And so I want to thank y'all for that. Our elders are here. So now we're going to, and let me just set the stage now. You know, as we start this conversation with all these great minds here, it's important to understand that the conversations, you know, sometimes get dynamic. Right. And so there are some important moments that may occur. And so although I've been raised Baptist most of my life, but we are Presbyterian by training. And so sometimes we have a written script, and sometimes we learn to kind of change it up a little bit. And so we're going to try to do that and stay on schedule as well. So I'm going to bring forward the next question. And this is a question for all the panelists. And it's sort of asking you to sort of go back within the scope of this one last year, or it could be cumulative. And so when you think about being caught between COVID-19, our pandemic, and racial unrest in America, I want you to describe or give us one word that comes to your mind that you wish to share with us. And you can, you know, provide a quick narrative about that one word, but I think it's important to start off with that one word. Who'd like to start us off?
I can kick off. So appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this important program. And you know, I say pain. And the reason why pain comes to mind is that it's really been a very, very hard year for everybody, but particularly for Black folks, just from an economic standpoint, a health standpoint, a job standpoint. And so that's what word comes to me over this last year: pain.
Thank you.
Let me just follow that comment with apprehensive. When I look back at where we've come from, what we have recently gone through, and what we are witnessing in terms of the right-wing forces that are challenging the very idea of a democracy in this country that includes African Americans and people of color, and clearly a demonstration that they are willing to engage in military action to prevent us from being a part of this democracy. And I'm hoping that my apprehension does not come into fruition, but it certainly underscores the need that we need to continue the fight and to fight robustly to maintain the freedoms that we seek to enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll just kind of build upon each other's conversation during this first part. All right, next.
I would say reality, because what we've gone through is nothing new, but it's been greatly exacerbated. And as Dr. Joyner said, or Attorney Joyner said, we have to continue to fight to overcome it, because it's real and we go through it all the time, but we have to survive and thrive.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mr. Vann?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the word I would use would be during this pandemic, really uncomfortable, just really being uncomfortable with what has transpired, not expecting it, something we've never experienced before, but really adapting to new challenges, new changes that we really have to partake in order to survive. So it's just really been a period for many of our citizens of being just uncomfortable with what is to come and what has happened in the past. And so how do we continue to move forward, accept those challenges, and really move forward?
Excellent, excellent.
And for me, it's been reflection, and not only with personal loss and just thinking about the changes that have come to the country, changes that come to our community, and thinking about how do we move forward. And
Excellent. And I would just quickly say, learning to adapt to the environment. If we can do that, and that's what we've all sort of been through. And so it's sort of good to sort of paint the picture for those who may not be aware of what others have sort of experienced during this time. And for those, as we prepare to open up school, we're about to see some of these words come into action. So that's important, all right? So thank y'all for that. So we want to also take a look at, you know, and if you can just sort of share, like, what is one thing that you learned about yourself as we prepare to sort of move into your specialty areas, but what's one thing that you've learned about yourself during this period?
Well, since no one else is saying anything,
Start it off.
Adaptability, the ability to, I think, as Dr. Frazier would suggest, to adjust to changing conditions, changing times, changing environments that we have had to encounter, to learn new things and to develop new skills as we move forward, and then to understand the dangers that we face, no matter where we are or what we are doing in terms of the survival effort that we are all engaged in.
Indeed. Helpful points. All right, next.
For me, it's been like a moving target. I mean, we really learn how to adapt, but it's been a moving target. Every day is totally something different. How do we really help our fellow brothers and sisters to be a part of this moving target and not be left behind? If we kept up and we continue to advance. So really learning how to adapt and these significant changes we have to make, we have to adjust to. We don't really have a choice.
Indeed. Thank you. All right, next.
I think, I mean, I piggyback on both of those. There are certainly things I learned. I think I'm a better teacher now that I've had to do it via virtual and things of that nature. But one thing I will say is I think I've learned to appreciate, you know, we always say these things about, you know, appreciate every day, every moment. But I think with everything that's happened with COVID and the loss of people and friends and family, things of that nature, I certainly, you know, feel blessed every day that I wake up and you know, on this side of the table. And so I've certainly learned an appreciation at an even deeper level for the appreciation of life.
Thank you. That's important. I think we all agree with that.
I think for me, adapting is a tough word. I think this for me has been a time of thinking about what's next, not only in terms of personal goals, but things you think about our community and larger community. And the idea that we're going to return back to normalcy is just a fallacy. And I think this should have been an opportunity to be thinking about things that could possibly be changed, to reimagine things that we thought could not be changed. So we probably need to be thinking more about what will never be the same again, and how we're going to go forward and make sure that things that happened in the past will not take place again. So more outwardly looking, more futuristic, and thinking about, we can't go back to what was. So we need to be thinking about what's going to be.
Indeed. All right.
I learned the importance of what I call mope. Things can become overwhelming and exhausting, but I must have motivation and organization And I have to remember to prioritize and endure. And I also have to remain faithful and grateful, because those things can encourage you and inspire you to keep going despite it all.
Right. I want to thank y'all. This is helpful. I know normally when you're doing interviews, people don't sort of probe into these, but I think it's helpful for everyone to sort of have a chance to sort of, breathe just a little bit and kind of share these experiences, because you never know the impact that you may be having on someone else. So that's important to note. So I want to thank y'all for that part. So we're going to get prepared to kind of move into sort of the next phase. And so as we kind of tee up and sort of hear from all the panelists in the next few minutes, and Dr. Robinson, you will be the first, of course, coming up in the next few moments. But I want to first throw a question out, and I think I posed it to y'all to help y'all to give us a window into what we may not know. There are a lot of things that we think we know, but I want you all, from each of you all from your own respective areas, share with us the least reported story that deserves attention that everyone should know this day and right now. And I know that's a heavy topic, but educate us. And who'd like to start us off?
Well, let me start. I would say that this whole pandemic, so many stories have been reported, but mainly one of the things that I really noticed about this community, in particular coming from my own discipline, is that this has been a real humanitarian effort. It's been a real humanitarian. I've seen people do things to assist and to really help their neighbor, to really contribute, to continue to help rebuild our community, because Dr. Frazier is right. Normalcy is a fallacy, and we are not going to be like it was on yesterday. So we got to conceptualize ourselves and to really look at how do we make this community better, the service that people have been providing, feeding people, helping people just with basic needs have been so essential during this time. And I just think that, you don't see a lot of what is being done to help one another. And I think that's critical as we get through the pandemic. Why did the pandemic happen? Why did it happen to us like this? But it's a lesson for all of us. And I think being able to be our brothers and sisters keeper is most important.
Thank you. That's a very good perspective, a world that we would not see, of those who are helping those during this period and during this time. That's important. Thank you. Thank you. Next.
I think in the memory of Juneteenth and why we're here today, we know that President Biden is going to sign the bill later today. We should note that there's just been an undercurrent about this becoming a national holiday. For those folks in Texas and the Southwest, and even in other areas of the country, these Emancipation days, African Americans did not wait for the government to tell them to take a day off. They took the day off on those secular holidays, and they did no work on those days, and it was understood there would be no work done on those days. In the broader conversation, I just want to drop this nugget in there. There has been something passed called the National Freedom Day in the United States of America. It was passed by President Truman in 1948, and it was led by Major R.R. Wright Sr., and he led a movement to create what we call National Freedom Day that was passed by both houses of the Congress and signed by the president. It's just interesting to see our community forget about our memories and things that already have been commemorated. And that was set at February 1st. So there was once upon a time a National Freedom Day passed by the United States Congress, signed by the president, and now long forgotten. So we have to be careful about things being signed. We can forget very easily.
Wow. We all just got educated. Thank you. Wow. Next.
Let me just kind of add to the mix of thoughts that are being projected here. But we have recently seen and celebrated the graduations of literally millions of young Black and brown folks from high school, from colleges, from graduate programs, doctoral programs, who represents the vanguard that's going forward. that no matter what it is that we do in terms of creating a foundation, cementing a platform, that they are now preparing themselves to move forward and to use those things that we are able to leave behind to advance our people. And I think that that is a very important part of the Juneteenth remembrance. I don't call it a holiday because I'm not celebrating it, but I'm remembering from whence we came and what we were able to overcome. So I see it as a day of remembrance, it's a day of hopefulness, but that we do have a cadre of young people who are taking off their gowns and flipping off those hats. And now they are moving forward to take their place in the world to be the army that we need to guide our people toward greater freedom, greater power, greater participation in developing this democracy.
Wow. So the investment in the next generation and that next cadre to come on and take the leadership role. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Who do we have next?
I agree with those who've gone before me because it's important to recognize the power of unity, legacy, and endurance. So just as Dr. Page said, during these times, we've been able to thrive by working together. And in terms of legacy, we have to desire and strive for legacy because the progress we've made is due to the work of our forefathers and those names that we've called out. And we have to have endurance to run on and to fight on and to hang on, you know, despite what comes before us. And that's how we move from the past into the present and forward into the future.
Wow. Could have said it any better. Couldn't have said it any better. And so I think you all are sort of helping to, you know, helping to give us a much wider view and much more complex nature of this conversation, that it is not just a one way look at how we not just link the past, but also how we're talking about issues of the present. And so I want to thank you all for sort of opening up that door. And so we're going to kind of move on in a little faster pace, sort of about taking a look at what we call sort of like a little round robin here. And so I've kind of teed up a few questions for you all to consider. And so Dr. Robinson, of course, I'm going to, of course, yield to you and let you lead us on. And so she's going to share with us what we call the challenges facing Black women in the era of COVID-19. And so we shall prepare to give you the opportunity to make your presentation, and we thank you for taking the time to do so.
Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Vann. And in the interest of time, I won't be before you too long, but I do want to bring your attention to some of the challenges facing Black women in this era of COVID-19. While many have hailed COVID-19 the great equalizer, suggesting that it has devastated everyone equally without regard to race, class, or gender, I suggest that COVID-19 has actually been the great magnifier, and it has highlighted the disparities faced by many groups. And some of the groups that have been disproportionately impacted are Black and brown cultures, the elderly, the disabled, and other groups. But I want to take a moment today to highlight the disparities that have been faced by Black women. Some of the areas I would like to highlight are the areas of health, communication, finances, work-life responsibilities, and social outlets. So in terms of health, African-American or Black women have been disproportionately burdened by COVID because we are highly represented in fields as frontline workers, so that we have a greater exposure to the virus, and we're more likely to suffer from pre-existing health conditions that increase our risk of death from this disease. We're also more likely to reside in high density areas that prevent social distancing, which again increases the risk of spreading the disease. We suffer a higher toll on our mental health. We have experienced vulnerabilities to chronic psychological stress from suppressing pain and anger and trying to continue to overcome. You see that 67% have reported mental health concerns in the areas of anxiety, depression, isolation, and sleep disturbance. We're also stressed by trying to balance multiple responsibilities. So childcare, elder care, our community responsibilities, financial responsibilities. We also have reduced access to health care. So during this time, there are a lot of appointments canceled. There was not childcare because schools were closed. Childcare centers were at reduced capacity or closed. And there was also difficulty filling prescriptions. So we were not able to get the health care that we needed many times. Also, we have the issue of not being believed by the healthcare providers. So we see what happened with Dr. Susan Moore, and that's not uncommon, where the doctors don't believe you when you're expressing what you're going through and what you're expressing what you need. So you're often, considered to be seeking drugs at that time when you're expressing the pain you're in. Even prior to COVID, African-American women were disproportionately burdened by maternal concerns. So this was just heightened during this time due to isolation during childbirth, not being able to get in-person prenatal care, and also financial anxiety. In terms of communication, we all know that communication is key, but during this time when we needed communication to find out how to access healthcare or to access resources that were needed, that we were saturated with misleading information. We often got information from friends or family or from the TV or internet, even from email subscriptions. But we never knew what information was factual and what information we could believe, because there was a lot of misinformation floating around on social media and even often found in some news sources. 79% of Black women reported being confused by the information they received and uncertain of who or what to believe. Additionally, Black women face a history of unjust medical experimentation and unethical medical practice. And so this impedes their trust even in credible information. There was an increase in financial woes during this time. Black women are often the primary provider in many Black families, or often are single parents. But during this time, there were higher unemployment rates, and there was more job loss. There was more difficulty finding work. And so this led to more things like food insecurity, more challenges for how to find housing or maintaining housing. There was a great dependence on unemployment and stimulus checks, whereas many of the white women polled indicated the ability to save the stimulus checks. Black women were more in need of this to provide housing and to pay their rent or to pay their mortgage. And during this time, we see that Black women were more likely to rely on emergency measures for funding. So if they had a savings, they dipped into those, and many of those became depleted, or they're more likely to have to rely on assistance from family and friends. Black women also often find themselves pulling more double shifts. So there is that need to be in charge or to be responsible for things at home as well as at work. So there was increased household or caregiving responsibilities because, again, of the schools closing and because of the need to take care of elderly who may not have wanted to be exposed to assisted living homes. So with the decreased access to childcare and with virtual learning, during this time, technology became a blessing as well as a curse. So with children learning from home, mothers often had more responsibility for ensuring that they receive their education. that they remained disciplined, that they had good mental and emotional health as well as their physical health. This also caused them to have to provide more meals during the day. And also with this technology, for those who were working from home, you were present in the house, but you may not have been connected to your family because you were on Zoom or on WebEx from sun up to sundown. So at work, 52% of Black women reported being the only representative of their race or gender at work. So therefore, they often felt uncomfortable sharing their thoughts of racial inequities or sharing what they were experiencing due to COVID or what their communities was experiencing. They were 2.5 times more likely to report death of a loved one, but more likely to feel uncomfortable sharing their grief. Additionally, there was no place to pray or to play. So with the the stay-at-home orders, and with jobs closing, with schools closing, there was an increased rate of domestic violence because oftentimes those suffering from intimate partner violence were trapped at home with their abusers and often unable to reach out to the places that provided assistance. And also these places that provide assistance for domestic violence, some of them experience lowered staffing during this time. As we know, the churches were closed, and this is oftentimes where Black women find a sense of strength and support, and just being able to go and pray or go and socialize or to speak with someone. There was reduced access to gyms and other recreation facilities. So oftentimes you didn't even have this as an outlet to cope with the stressors that you were enduring. And so we were also often isolated from friends because of the stay-at-home orders. And so, and with everybody around you at home, that limited the ability to even, call friends and really confide in them, because oftentimes someone was always around you. So just a few recommendations to assist in overcoming these. There is a need for targeted research and policy interventions to address the challenges faced by Black women. We also need more opportunities for better wages, to provide stable homes, to reduce the food insecurities. There should be reconsideration of qualifications for entry and mid-level positions so that more women can find positions for working. We need enforced safety procedures and medical provisions. So on some jobs, they did not provide adequate PPE, or the workers were unable to take off work, or they were afraid to even get tested for COVID, because if they found out they were positive and could not work, then if they didn't work, they didn't get paid, and again, their families would suffer. So we also need to expand efforts to make work more flexible and more sustainable, and foster a culture in which Black women are fully valued. Other recommendations is the need for access to affordable, quality health care and quality treatment by physicians. We also need to enhance our utility of doulas and midwives to reduce some of the medical issues experienced by pregnant women. We need more access to credible information by trusted sources, and we need more efforts to decrease food insecurity. We have to resist policies to reduce public housing assistance and Medicaid and Medicare coverage and Social Security benefits. And on a personal level, Black women have to realize that self-care is not selfish. It is actually a necessity and something that you must do, because if you don't put on your mask first, then you may not be around to help others. And we also must not be ashamed to utilize mental health services. So during COVID-19, even though we were all in the same storm, we were not in the same boat. And so we need more targeted efforts to help Black women overcome the challenges faced during this time. Thank you.
Dr. Robinson, this is why you're on here. You're helping to light the world and helping to share with us the experiences of those that oftentimes don't get talked about, African-American women. And so certainly, I think not only have you provided an analysis of what the problems and issues are, but also I thank you for moving ahead and providing a prescription to some of these issues that otherwise we may not be aware of. And so I imagine the chat function is going to be quite active in terms of people may have questions for you. So I want to thank you for that. And so appreciate it. I thank you so much. So we're going to try to move directly to Professor Joyner, and then I may have to move up Professor McCoy because I know he's going to have to depart soon. So after Professor Joyner, I'll move up Professor McCoy. If that will work. So Professor Joyner, in a whole new area, can you paint the picture for us of what the question of criminal justice reform looks like, and also what are some of the modern day prescriptions you would offer for it? And we thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join with us, and thankful as always.
I'm honored to be a part of this discussion with this distinguished panel. Great minds that can provide us with a lot of information. But quickly moving into the subject area, the focus in terms of criminal agencies and the criminal process has been very bleak for African Americans and people of color. And to a very real extent, we are all victimized by this process. And I speak of this really from kind of a personal basis rather than an academic one, although the academics support exactly what my experience has been growing up in a Jim Crow world, particularly in North Carolina or in New York City. A Jim Crow world that always saw African Americans as being the least of these, and criminal justice agencies and the criminal process has always been utilized to demean, undermine, and suppress the positions of African Americans and people of color in this country, whether we're talking about the police and the racial profiling that has occurred over the years and is continuing to exist today. The use of police as killers of our people. And I start back with my cousin who was murdered by a white police officer when I was 7 years old, an event that is indelibly imprinted in my mind today. And that creates a trail leading right up to George Floyd and Andrew Brown and Akil Dinkins and others who have been killed by police officers for no reason whatsoever other than racial superiority. Looking at the failures of African Americans and people of color to be able to get out of jail on bail while after they have been arrested, and there is a disproportionality as it relates to jail population, prison populations dealing with African Americans, and that's all a part of a design that is in place, which puts us in a position of being further victimized. And if you don't watch what you're doing, then you enhance the opportunity to be victimized. And that's why we always talk about the having a talk with our sons and having a talk with our daughters, because we all recognize the high potential of being victimized and how to avoid the victimization when, if you are in a privileged situation, you don't have to worry about that. When we look at the absence of African Americans who are in positions of power within the criminal justice process and controlling criminal justice agencies, but also creating policies and procedures and maintaining accountability to those individuals who are in those agencies, it is the lack of accountability that has victimized us mightily in years past. And unless we are replacing people and placing individuals within these agencies to make decisions that's going to protect our people will not be protected. And then the prison system. Citizen is disproportionate. We get the heavy end of that. In North Carolina, we're 22% of the population. We're 56% of the prison population. And we look at those individuals who are in solitary confinement, which is virtually torture that exists, and then they come out and to further create havoc in the system of the penal system that we have. So there are a lot of ills that's there. The major prescription is involvement. That is to move ourselves into positions of power where we can control and make decisions, where we can develop policy, we can enforce procedures, and we can hold those persons who are supposed to protect and serve accountable for the actions and conduct in which they are involved. And as we begin to improve our active and robust involvement in helping to educate our people so that they avoid these issues, then we will improve the respect for these agencies by people within our community. And I think that concomitantly we will have a decrease in the high level of victimization that we are presently facing. I'm going to stop there because I know our time is winding down.
Yeah, well, you lit the fire along with Dr. Robinson. So I want to thank you. We won't be able to process everything right now, but it does open the door to greater conversations. And I want to thank you for that as well. Dr. McCoy, so I'm going to pivot right quick to the question of looking at economic justice and in the social justice movement around the question of Black wealth. So Professor McCoy, can you give us a look at the world of work as it relates to African Americans since George Floyd's death, and also this question around social justice and corporations and businesses, and really have they delivered sort of in an equitable manner and way, and also I want you to share with the audience as briefly as you can what happened right before you came on this program. You had a wonderful announcement just happened, so I want you to share that with the audience.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this, and I'm building on top of what Dr. Robinson said and Professor Joyner, and to your question. So we know that this is a North Carolina Central University platform. NCCU is part of what is the historic Hayti community in Durham. Hayti at its height was an incredible place for Black entrepreneurship, Black wealth. It was called the city on the hill for Blacks, the capital of Black middle class. Had more African American millionaires per capita than in any place in the United States. At one time, North Carolina Mutual Insurance Company, which is actually where I'm doing this broadcast from right now, was the largest Black business in the world. When Dr. W. Du Bois came here in 1912, he talked about this ecosystem, this entrepreneurial ecosystem that was so incredible. Many people know that W.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but what they did see eye to eye on was that Durham was the most incredible place that they'd ever seen for African Americans. And so I say that in the context of, as you mentioned, part of the reason why I have to have some limited time is that I made an announcement earlier today around an initiative, an effort called Hayti Reborn. Hayti Reborn is framed around this idea that the rise of Hayti was incredible. Whenever 100 years ago, whenever Tulsa, Oklahoma was destroyed through a white mob, Durham's Hayti community was essentially the de facto Black community, Black Wall Street left in the United States. And it actually held this position for many more years ahead until the Durham Freeway came through. And so we've seen essentially the rise of the Black business ecosystem here. We've seen the decline of it, what I call the death of it, and an announcement that came earlier today was about an effort to revitalize that and create this Hayti Reborn. So I think that it actually ties in well with your question. We can talk about the last year. What we've seen in the last year is an incredible decline of Black businesses. By some estimates, literally in the first few months of the pandemic, between essentially February and April, there was estimated about 40% of Black businesses across the United States shutting their doors. when you look at it further out into the fall of 2020, that number may be closer to 65%, because really it ties into this issue of equity. Many of us heard about the payroll protection program and these other efforts that were being done by the federal government. But, just like historic other areas of time, whenever, as they say, white America got the flu, Black America got pneumonia. The prescription that came after that really, was not equitable. And we think about it oftentimes, this idea that, okay, everybody's kind of putting the resources in. But in reality, a lot of times, federal action actually leads to bigger gaps. And so this is a current situation now where the way the payroll protection program was instituted, it actually exacerbated the economic wealth gap that we now know. Most of the money that went to companies and corporations that were already wealthy. You asked a very specific question about, where do we land and where do we sit in terms of, Blacks and employment and what these major corporations have, made commitments for. Call me skeptical, but what I saw during the pandemic was a situation where, because of the economy being shut down, essentially everybody was doing the same thing all the time, essentially sitting at home, watching television and things of that nature, trying to figure out, when we're going to get back to some level of normality, which we probably never will be able to. At that time, all these issues and things that Professor Joyner mentioned, and things that we see, the brutality of the police killings, those things came right front and center at everybody's home at the same time. So when George Floyd was killed by the officer, everybody saw it in real time, and that was obviously something that we hadn't always seen. And at that moment, what we saw across the United States and even the world is a multi-racial group of folks across different age demographics who all came out at the same time with signs and protests and things of that nature, Black Lives Matter. I think from a corporate standpoint, again, not to be skeptical, but to say, well, what those corporations saw essentially were their customers. Out there, customers of all different races and things of that nature. And so then it became all of a sudden a bit safer to come out and say Black Lives Matter too. You saw CEOs come out and say, make those statements like in ways that they've never made them before. And then following that, making enormous, financial pledges at least to invest in the community. To speak to kind of where that, what we've seen from that is that, what I think the jury's still out in a lot of ways into what will all those pledges mean. Many of the pledges are not going to what I would call root issues of systematic racism. You also got to ask the question, are they more marketing than they are actual concrete efforts? Certainly, even thinking about these efforts around investing in Black businesses or shopping, buying Black, which I'm never going to push against this idea of spending money with Black businesses. But the question is, but spending money one day, out the year is not going to fundamentally change the dynamics of the economics, and it's got to be more sustainable. And so to speak to your question specifically, we're still in a very perilous road position as the Black community. And certainly, if I go back to, look back to think about the present, if I look back, what made Hayti so unique is that not only did Hayti have access to capital, it was controlled by Black folks. And Black folks invest those capital into Black ideas into the community. And, the old road, kind of saying, the golden rule, he or she who has the gold makes the rules. And therefore, for much of history, you saw when, in Hayti community and other places, when the Black people had access to capital, they could invest, they could create job opportunities for their community. They could create apprenticeships and internships for young people. They could invest in social issues that they cared about, things of that nature. And so we're still at an perilous position, and we have to see how it plays out. But the Hayti Reborn effort really is about this idea of how do we take control back of this kind of entrepreneurial platform and create a foundation of wealth that can really move us where we need to as a community, so we don't have to ultimately rely on either government investment or some of the corporations. But at the same time, it's going to take reparative justice, which means that may be a fancy way of saying reparations or whatever you want to call it, but there's got to be some investment from what was taken from the community going forward.
Okay. I want to thank you for that. You've helped to inform us and educate us today. And we really appreciate it. And it will not be forgotten. And we thank you, as always, for helping to lay that wonderful foundation for us. Thank you. So I'm gonna move to Reverend Page, and just to make sure we keep everybody on time. And then Dr. Frazier, I want you to help me. Anything that we miss, you'll have that closeout point, and then we have one question, and we'll move to Q&A, and we should be off to our next agenda. But Dr. Page, give us a look at talking about the role of the Black church. You're a pastor, you're an administrator, you've been a public servant as well. But what has surprised you the most? In thinking about Dr. Skip Gates' wonderful piece on the Black church, what has surprised you the most about the role of the Black church in the African American community and at large?
Thank you so much, Mr. Vann, for the opportunity to be on this panel, especially with this distinguished panel that we have today. Before I answer what surprised me, can I just share a little bit of historical perspective? I do want to thank Dr. Frazier for his enlightening presentation at the beginning. And I want to say that the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance here in Durham has Emancipation every year on the January 1st, and it's a wonderful celebration. So I do encourage people to find out about that and become a part of it. I want to coin my comments today about from this phrase, that was then and this is now. That was then, this is now. Then was a unified community working together to effect change. The Black church was the voice for its people. It was an institution where we came together, we learned from each other, we knew what was happening in our community. I echo the statement that knowledge is power. People were yearning for knowledge. They wanted to know what to do. They wanted to know the right thing to do, and so that they could really help affect change in our community. Also about what was then was that communities supported each other. It was a real sense of a neighborly kind of community. I don't feel that even now in parts of many of our communities, but that all offset came from the church and living in that same community, going to that same church, growing up together and being able to share in those experiences. The church also was a social, educational, and economic outlet for people. Dr. Robinson hit it right. The churches are closed right now. People are just stagnated in terms of how to really gain that interaction that we once had before. And then when we think about the church, and this is probably the most powerful piece of the church, music and preaching. It was not entertainment. Music and preaching was key to engaging in a spirited worship and being able to learn about the Bible, learn it through music and through song. And so all of these things were just so important to us as a community with the church. We were empowered by actions and the directions of the church. On Sunday morning, the pastors will share with us, what we need to be focused on during the course of the week, what we need to be focused on during this course of the month. That's where that leadership came from. I'm ashamed to say, but where I grew up, all I ever knew from African-American leadership was preachers and teachers. That was basically all I saw. I saw a real doctor when I came to North Carolina Central in 1979. So that's real sad. I mean, an African-American doctor, but I'm so glad to be in this community and be around people who are doing great things. The other part about the church that was then, it was about mobilizing communities, really empowering people to work, to get in and to do the things that needed to be done to help everybody, that would help change others' lives. So you want to know what surprised me? I'm surprised now that we don't have voter registration drives. We don't take people to the polls. We don't mobilize our members to the polls. This is where the power is. This is where we lost the race here in regards to that. I'm surprised we're not at meetings that impact our communities and our families. You alluded to at the beginning, there were just, I was a public servant. It was so few people in this community, African-American people, who came to meetings and spoke out. Some were regulars, and I was glad to see them come because otherwise those issues would not be addressed. I'm surprised we don't have representation on boards and commissions that affect us daily. Our highways, our parks, our streets, transportation. Durham is getting ready to be changed all over again because of transportation. And it's sad. I'm one of 2 or 3 people in the room, And I feel like we have I'm surprised we don't have a voice there. I'm surprised as a pastor, we got a homeless problem in our community and all these buildings are vacant. I'm surprised if we can go to sleep at night and people are sleeping outside. It's awful. I'm surprised that we are not mobilizing together our churches and our NAACP, our civic groups, the Divine Nine. That's one of the most powerful groups in this community. It's well represented here today. But all of us must come together to really make an impact on our community. We're losing the race in this regard, in my opinion. I'm surprised that we have a poverty issue and that there's no solution for it. We have a poverty issue and there's no solution for it. We do have, as Dr. Robinson alluded to, again, food insecurities. This is unforgivable. This is something we must put our foot forward and address. No one should be hungry in this community. And then finally, Juneteenth is about freedom. Are we totally emancipated? Are we really free from voter apathy? We have to ask our own self that question. I'm surprised that we are so critical of one's effort, but where is the unity to change and make a difference in the lives of these communities? And then Professor Joyner summed it up for all of us, and I think it's a summation of this whole event. We have got to get involved. We have got to get involved. We got to get involved in our communities. We got to deal with the economic issues. We got to deal with this police reform. We got to deal with these issues that affect our women in this community. We got to deal with the issues that affect our youth. There are so few youth in most of our churches. It's a sad day. Let's get involved. We want to celebrate. It's not a holiday. We're going to celebrate. We're going to reflect upon where we're lacking and how do we really move forward in terms of making a change. So those are just a few comments, but again, I'm grateful for this discussion today because this is where it is. We have got to begin discussing this so that we can determine a solution to solve these issues. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you, Dr. Page, have opened that door along with other panelists here, and I think you have, I believe, as I was seeing the chat features, quite a few comments were coming through, and I think you have an amen corner, those in agreement with you, and so we want to thank you for that, for sharing that. Now, as we kind of try to find a way to kind of pivot on out, Dr. Frazier, if you got maybe about 1 or 2 minutes, maybe, what did we miss? And go right on, and then we're gonna quickly move on.
We didn't miss much, and you're asking me to come out to Dr. Page. He just lit us all up and gave us a resolution, and I want to salute him. But just quickly here, today was what Juneteenth should be about. It should be a day that we remember. There will be people in our community and even amongst us who will celebrate. At the same time, it's a reminder of things we need to be thinking about, not only about the past, but about the future. If you think about the panelists today, Dr. Robinson talked about health. We can make all the plans in the world. Our health will stymie and stop everything we're thinking about. So health is your wealth. You're nothing without your health. You think about Professor Joyner talking about law in our community. That is something that is near and dear to us. And we think about the retrenchment of voting rights in this country. Dr. McKoy in business. Business was so central to our community and trying to start businesses and keep them going. And that's something that I'm glad he's a part of that and trying to keep that initiative going. Not only remembering Hayti and the enormous Black business community, but what about the future Black business community? And that's something that he's working on. Dr. Page and faith. I want to remind Dr. Page, he just got my bell ringing there. The Durham Ministerial Alliance, after 13 years in the 1970s, brought back Emancipation Day into Durham. So I want to salute that organization over that as well. And just piggyback on Dr. Page a little bit as we close out here. Durham, before the COVID, led the nation in evictions. That's nothing to be proud of. There's really no affordable housing here. And I'm speaking for somebody who needs some affordable housing too, you know. None of us are exempt from that in terms of what this community is turning into, almost like a little San Francisco in terms of the prices here. He's right about the youth initiatives that are so vital and so necessarily needed in this community. So I want to salute the panelists because you have health, you have legal, you have business, you have faith. And he is right. Our churches kept our history. And they continue to keep our history, and they are a vital institution, always have been and always will. So I just want to close on that.
All right. Well, thank you, and great summation. Thank you very much. And let me just a little housekeeping for those that are here with us and maybe moving out shortly. There is a survey, and so we love to get feedback from you. It's in your chat feature there, so feel free to do so. Also, I'm glad to note as well that my colleagues here have put together a companion guide. This is by the marketing committee that will accompany Juneteenth. So in case you have questions about tomorrow, about this, it's important to get a chance to sort of see that as well. So I'm going to hold off on my one last question, but I think I better close out on, we may have opportunity for maybe one or two questions. And so I'll let my colleagues kind of tee that up, and then we'll close out.
Several questions have come in from the attendees in the chat, and they're quite interesting. I'm not sure how you're going to get through all of them, but I'll start with this one.
Okay.
An attendee asks, while it's great to see Juneteenth a national holiday, how performative would you say the bill is?
Interesting question. Who'd like to jump in on that?
Well, I'll say it's not very performative in the sense that it does not call for any reparations or any efforts to remedy the issues and problems it calls for a celebration. And we're at a time that we have enough celebration, we don't have enough action. And to the extent that we are moving toward gaining power that we can use to defend, protect, and define ourselves, then celebration is meaningless. Slaves celebrated, but we're past that point of needing celebrations, but we do need to remember from whence we came and to ensure that we fight to ensure that we don't go back to those situations.
Excellent. Could have said any better. Couldn't have said any better. All right. So anyone else want to join in on that? And if not, we'll move on to the next question. All right. Thank you. All right, so do we have another question there?
Yes. How do we ensure that our mental situation is improved? We experience TSD, traumatic stress syndrome, constantly. It's not PTSD. It is constantly occurring without being addressed. We also have to almost have a dual identity personality to be successful in the larger society.
Okay. Anyone like to take that?
Andre, I'll tackle that. The question, the mental
health.
And from my vantage point, we really do have to speak about that from the pulpit. We cannot be afraid of that. We're losing our people, especially during the pandemic, because of being cooped up in the house. They cannot go anywhere. There's no outlet, so to speak, and people becoming depressed. They don't see anything on the outside. We have to really address this, and we got to have frank, strict conversations about how to improve and how to enhance our mental health being so that we are healthy, wholesome individuals and not be afraid to do it.
So you're saying not just church, but the whole body,
the
mind,
whole
body, spirit.
The whole body. As a matter of fact, and I'm not sure if any of my members on here, but none of my members know what I'm doing on Monday night. I'm bringing in a mental health expert to talk to us from a spiritual perspective on mental health, because I'm noticing in our behaviors and in our personalities and the way we're speaking, and we got to address it. So, but if I announced there was a mental health forum, nobody would come. Nobody would come. But you get there and we begin to engage and feel like it's safe, then it's okay.
Right, because there is a day where everyone will come back together, and we'll find that not everyone has sort of gone through that process of the preparation to come back, right? It wasn't easy going away, and it certainly won't be easy coming back together. So that's important. Thank you for that. And I think Ms. Ms. Scott Branch, thank you, first of all, for it. We have one last question, I think, and then we'll try to close out.
Okay. With the progression of gentrification in Durham, what are some activities, reforms, educational platforms that you have seen to maintain the Black community?
Can she repeat it, please?
Can you
Yes,
repeat that, please?
absolutely.
Thank you.
With the progression of gentrification in Durham, what are some activities, reforms, educational platforms that you have seen to maintain the Black community?
Other than what was presented by Dr. McKoy, quite frankly, I haven't seen much that is designed to stem this gentrification and this new removal of our people from these communities. They are being dispersed, which is going to impact politically where we are within the city and in this state. And there is very little being done to deal with that issue. I think, the flow of money and money power is driving this engine. And we have not yet been able to come up with a strong counterforce to minimize the negative impacts of this.
Yeah, well, I guess I would kind of add in there that I think the more informed a community is, the better it can respond to the issues that are there. I told folks I miss every day my good friend Kenny Edmonds at the Carolina Times, because it was something important. It came out in that paper. But thank goodness it's spectacular, and also the Raleigh Carolinian and the Triangle Tribune. Thank goodness they're still there. And then we have other modes and ways to sort of have these conversations. I mean, your program, the Legal Eagle Review, that also offers an opportunity. And so what that means is that, we have to do a better job of keeping people informed about what's going on. But then too, that very important part that you all have said, it's not just enough to talk about what the problem is, but as we have said, provide a prescription. And what are some methods and what are some ways? And I know we won't answer all those questions right here and now, but at least let us hope that we have at least opened that door to allow that conversation to come in. All right, so do we have any one last statement as I prepare to close out? All right, okay, there being none, let me thank Ms. Scott Branch for that great assistance there. Everyone, I want you to join me in thanking these panelists for a very fascinating conversation. You know where to find them, right? Because they're here at Norfolk State University. I hate to put them out there like that, but we appreciate them all. We could not have done this without you. We thank you for bringing your talents and your strengths to this place, and I am appreciative. As one that's been around here since a freshman, dating back to 1988, and only gone 1 year. I just so appreciate, all the talents that you have given to this great conversation, and we couldn't have done it without you. And so I want you all to virtually thank them as well, and we thank you for that. So as we prepare to close out, I did again want to make sure we remind persons about the survey. That's important for us going forward, to have an idea and to gauge and also get feedback from you all about what was shared here that we may not get a chance to cover. But also I want to thank my colleagues on the marketing committee, Ms. Faison, Ms. Colbert-Lewis, Ms. Murad, Ms. Scott Branch, Ms. Grimwood, and also Ms. Scott Branch, of course, for helping to make sure that that this wonderful piece that you see, the companion piece, is important, that we have, as I call it, a gift, that you're able to sort of go and find these very great resources that are here, but also find out more about who we are as individuals participating in this panel. And also, let me also thank as well you, the audience, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be informed and to learn a little bit more about Juneteenth, that we have helped to bring it back into the consciousness and let us work to maintain it. And more importantly, make it intergenerational. Share it with the next generation. Tell them about it. Take them to a program that is going on. and inform them of this past. And if you do that, then you've educated the next generation by giving them an example. And that's important. Let me get back to what I'm supposed to be doing. So also let's thank 90.7. As you know, they recorded the entire piece here to a much more broader world, and that is helpful. Let me thank the IT folk who helped to make this as seamless as possible, as you can tell and as you can see. And we could not have made it without you. And then last but not least, let me also thank University Relations and Ms. Hernandez and Ms. Shepard and others who helped to make sure that this program will be going out. And based on the attendance here today, we're appreciative of that work, because the evidence of that is that such a conversation like this garnered support all across the state of North Carolina of persons who want to come to hear you say. And so we're pleased to say that this will not be the last of the conversations. I can assure you of that. But at least we have opened that door. And so anyway, as I tell you all, as we depart, to sort of think about your message in a bottle. What would you leave? And that was the one question I didn't get a chance to ask everybody. But as we depart out, what message in a bottle would you leave for the next generation to know? Things that they should understand about period in which we live, but more importantly, not just talking about it, but provide that prescription for it. And I think we would then have done a great level of service. All right. And so with that being said, I want to thank you all the participants and all the persons that have helped to make this what it is. And I ask my colleagues, if you all on the marketing committee, is there anyone wish to provide anything? You certainly may do so at this time. And yes. Is there anyone wish to share? And with that being said, not so, again, we thank you for taking the time, and we look forward and tune in again. And thank you again. So appreciate you all. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Vann.
Thank you so much.
All right.
All right.